Hi there, this is Brenda with Keenan Kreations, and today I'm going to show you how to create this card using sponging and embossing. To get started, we're going to be working with shimmery white cardstock. We're going to use Versamark ink and a brand new stamp called Blended Blooms. This will be in the new catalog that comes out June 2nd. We're going to tap the Versamark ink all over the stamp. And before we stamp it, we're going to use the Embossing Buddy across the cardstock. And the Embossing Buddy will minimize those stray flecks that we sometimes have with embossing. So we're going to stamp this right in the corner. And you're going to press firmly because there's a lot of detail in the center of this flower. So you want to make sure that you get a nice clean image. And we're going to ink it up one more time. And again, press firmly. We're going to use white embossing powder, and I'm just going to take the cardstock and dip it in and let the powder run over that one flower and tap off the excess. And my cardstock's a little big, so I'm just going to put some powder on that second flower and kind of scoot that around and then tap off the excess. I'm going to use the heat tool to melt the powder, and I'll be right back. I've already embossed the flowers using the heat tool, and you want to make sure that it's nice and shiny, so be sure to do the embossing in a well-lit area. And I've cut down the paper just to make this a little more manageable. I'm going to be using sponge daubers, and we're going to start with Daffodil Delight. And the sponge daubers fit right on the end of your finger, and you just kind of press it onto the ink pad to load it up with ink. I'm going to start right in the center of the embossed flower, and I'm going to go in a circular motion. And I start mostly in the center, and then I work my way out, and I want to get a little bit of this yellow out to that first little row of flowers around the center. And then we're going to repeat for this flower here, and we'll go with Melon Mambo next. And again, sponge dauber on the end of your finger, and just kind of pat it on your ink pad. So just kind of start near the edge here and go in a circular motion, and then kind of work your way to the flower. And I'm just going all the way around to blend with that yellow and that first little layer. So I would like my flowers to be a little darker around the outside edge and get softer as it goes in. So always start off the edge and then just kind of work your way in. And I'm doing a soft circular motion, so I'm not really pressing that hard. And I'm just overlapping that yellow that was on that first layer of petals. Now the nice thing about sponging is you can keep going back over it and intensify those colors till you get it the way that you like it. So I want these to be a little darker right around the outside petals. Now I'm going to go back to the Daffodil Delight, and again start in the center and then just kind of go out into that first layer of petals. It'll soften that pink where it overlaps a little bit, and pink and yellow will give you a nice kind of an orange color between the two, which I think is really pretty. So the last thing we're going to do with this is add a little bit of the early espresso for the flower center. And again, sponge dauber and kind of load up your ink and go right in the center and just go a little bit out. And again, you can go back to your yellow just to kind of soften where they overlap a little bit. For trimming these flowers, I like to use our paper snips, and I don't cut right up on the embossed image. I leave a little border just outside, and you just want to have kind of soft, curvy cuts. And see, I think you can see where I'm leaving just a little bit of border around the edge, and you're just going to continue all the way around the flower. So you can see how pretty that is once you've trimmed it out. We're going to set this aside and do the other flower. Okay, so we're going to go use the pumpkin pie, another sponge dauber. You can rinse these things when you're done too. It'll leave a little bit of staining on the sponge, so you'll probably want to keep one for all the different shades of yellow and then this one for all the different shades of orange. So we're just going to load that up with some ink. And remember, you start outside the flower just in case the ink is too dark when you first hit the paper. And then once I get most of that ink on the outside edge, I start going in towards the center. And remember, you're going to overlap the colors a little bit on that Daffodil Delight. And the darker is right around the outside edge, and it'll just get a little softer as you go into the center. Now that looks pretty good. I'm going to go back with the Daffodil Delight and just hit that outside edge of petals right outside the center just to kind of soften that blending a little bit more. We're going to go back to the early espresso for the flower center and just go right in the center. Just nice and soft. And again, back to that Daffodil Delight so I can soften that early espresso. You just want your colors to be nice and soft next to each other, no harsh lines. Now we're going to trim this out the same way that we did the first one, leaving a little border around the edge. Now I've got both of the flowers trimmed, and the other thing I would recommend is taking a clean white tissue and just kind of buffing over the embossed image. Sometimes with all the sponging, there's a little bit of ink left on the embossed image, and this buffing will just remove that excess ink. We're going to use Shimmery white cardstock, and this is your standard card size. It's 8.5 by 5.5 and scored down the middle at 4 1/4. We're going to use this leaf image from Serene Silhouettes. We're going to ink it up in Pear Pizzazz. You're going to tap on the ink pad, and I'm just going to have some little sprigs of the leaves around. I don't want it to be too crowded, but I know I want one coming out towards the corner. And you're going to press firmly because this is a bold image stamp. So go back to your ink pad. So sometimes when you're stamping on or near the folded edge of your cardstock, it just doesn't press as cleanly as you would like, and you get these little areas that are not inked up. This is where your blender pen is useful. So this blender pen is stained a little bit from use, but it still is clear, so it's not going to transfer that color ink to the paper. But you always want to check just to make sure that it's clean. And you're going to tap to the ink pad. You're not going to use a marker. If we took a marker directly to this, you would see the lines. But if you use a blender pen, you can just lightly touch that up. And it'll soften that area. It'll also dry a little bit lighter too, so keep that in mind when you're doing touch-ups. We're going to use a stamp set called Remembering Your Birthday for the greeting. We're going back to the early espresso ink. Just tap. So now we're going to add the flowers to the front of the card, and before I do that, I'm going to add a little bit of curling to the petals with the bone folder. So you're just going to turn it over, and you're just going to kind of pull it just to slightly curl the edges. We're going to add dimensionals to the back, and I'm just going to put one right in the center. I'm going to add this one over to the left. And this one just a little bit over to the right. So there you go, pretty quick and easy card using a technique with embossing and sponging. I did stamp the flower images in the pumpkin pie and the melon mambo on the inside along with the greeting. I hope you enjoyed this project. For more ideas, please visit me at KeenanCreations.com. Thanks and have a great day.